Good evening from... Don't know what's going on over there. Good evening from London, wrestling fans. 1 second. This is the biggest disaster of an intro to the show ever. That's why you don't have... I try and do a dual monitor for one day and it turns into a disaster. Anyway, good evening from Swansea wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. We're 1 minute into the show. We've already had several technical difficulties, but it's sorted now, and boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of good stuff to talk about today. Last night, of course, was AEW All Out 2023, and it was a really, really great show. Heading into it, we had our concerns over the quality of the card. However, it's seriously exceeded all of our expectations and ended up being such a great pay-per-view. Now, we're going to be breaking down most of the matches today, saying what we liked, what we didn't like, and maybe even, if this was one of the best AEW pay-per-views to date. But firstly, let me introduce the panel of the show. Firstly, the head of Opinion Shirt Wrestling Republic, Anthony Ricciardi. How are things, Anthony?
Doing all right. It's a rare Monday I'm on. I'm looking forward to covering All Out. And before I forget, I definitely want to wish Clark, my co-host on Throwback Thursday and Sold Separately, a happy birthday, even though I know he's not going to see this because he's in the air while we're on the air. But I wanted to at least do that for him.
Absolutely. You beat me to it, Anthony. Of course, Clark is still not here today. He's traveling back from All Out. He was there live. You guys probably saw him if you watched the show. He was wearing a big Wrestling Republic t-shirt. He helped up Darby Allin. Happy birthday, Clark. Also joining us, we have another head of our department, the head of reviews here at Wrestling Republic, Coby Galenzoski. How are things, Coby?
I'm here to complete the head-heavy episode of the Wrestling Republic Daily. The only thing missing is Clark, of course. Safe travels, and happy birthday. At the end of the day, all of it was really fun. I think at the end of the day, my expectations were okay, this will be a really good show, but it's I wasn't excited for any of it. Or most of it, I was not I'm excited to see this. I'm excited to see this. But that's the thing. This was one of their better booked shows, start to finish, enjoyable. But of course, we'll get into it with Ben taking the lead.
Absolutely, and hopefully not me having any more technical difficulties. But talking about difficulties in this episode, there was a bit of a mix-up with the schedule, right? So we had to bring in somebody who I'm now referring to as the Fabio Vieira of Wrestling Republic, the Impact sub, if you will. Carter Crisp. How are things, Carter?
The sixth man of the year over here. I'm good. Happy birthday, Clark. Glad to see you. I hope you have a safe flight. Can't wait to see you back on the air. But no, I mean, give me a call. I'll be on. We were grilling hot dogs while I was watching the show on the iPad. But yeah, I totally thought, as the only one who said it was worth the $50 price of admission, I'd like to say I think the show over-delivered a little bit. My guy, Mr. Samoa Joe, looked great too. But yeah, happy to be here.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you here, Carter. And let's get straight into things. Let's get straight into talking about what opened the show. And even though it was an AEW pay-per-view, it was a Ring of Honor tag team match which opened the show. And that was MJF and Adam Cole, of course, the Ring of Honor tag team champions, teaming to face the Dark Order. And it was a fun way to start the pay-per-view. MJF was selling the neck injury, which he suffered early on in the match. Adam Cole then, he had to work most of the match on his own. It was a very kind of basic babyface tag team formula tag match. It It felt very old-fashioned. It was done, you've seen that thing done hundreds and hundreds of times in wrestling where one of the babyface partners gets hurt, they then come back later in the match and then help the other one win. It was very, very obvious. It was very predictable, but it was fun. The Chicago crowd loved it. Of course, I personally would have liked to see the AEW champion featured a bit more heavily in this, on a big pay-per-view such as All Out. But it was a fun match. Good way to open the pay-per-view. Anthony, I'll send it to you first. What did you think about this opening contest?
Overall, typically for arguably their biggest show of the year, All Out, I would prefer it having a world title match with MJF. However, because they crammed this in and did 2 major shows in 1 week time, there's really not a lot of options that they had to give you a main event match with MJF for the title other than Adam Cole. There really was no other built-in option. The only other built-in option is no longer part of the company, so that wasn't an option either. So, for them to do a tag match, it worked. It had, like you said, classic elements of one babyface getting injured, so the other one has to carry the load. I love the way that they played up the fact that Reynolds had a hand in training MJF, and he took him out. I love that little stuff there. The Dark Order showing a darker side, more towards the type of, Brody Lee, as opposed to the comedy act they've been playing. I thought that was smart. Playing up the neck, again, the neck sort of got injured, or they're playing that it was injured in his match with Adam Cole last week at All In. It all worked well. Ideally, the goal is to build further to whatever this MJF Adam Cole thing leads into. I don't think they're going to have a long title reign, but at the same point, I didn't think Dark Order was going to walk away with the belts. I'm thinking it's probably going to be the Kingdom when it does happen, but I liked it as a good opener.
Absolutely, I'll agree with you there. It was a fun opener to the show, like you stated, but it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. We got a comment on YouTube from Numero 1 Superfly saying, did anybody like the reference to what Samoa Joe did to MJF? And that takes us on to, our next point about this, because after Adam Cole and MJF successfully defended the ROH Tag Team Championships, they were walking up the ramp and down came Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe just walked directly into MJF and just pushed him out of the way. And like Numero 1 Superfly is referencing in the comments there, that was a throwback to NXT, because a few years ago, 2016, I believe, Samoa Joe, when he was in NXT, was walking through the locker room on his way to the ring with the NXT Championship. There was tons of security guards, and one he just barged out the way, and that man is now who we now know as Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF. So yes, it seems like a feud between these two is going to happen, and that is very, very exciting. I like how they're doing a bit of a throwback to the NXT thing, and I like when AEW do this. Anthony, you just, you referenced yourself about how, what's his name? Reynolds helped play a role in training them. And it's something where I kind of actually wish, and David was saying this actually yesterday after the show, he was saying that it's an advantage for AEW when they do play into storylines like that. But the fact they only had a week to build that, well, that was far from ideal, and they could have, played it out over a long period of time, that story, and really delved into those layers. But let's hope that's what they do now with Samoa Joe and MJF. But Carter, what did you think about the opening match? And we know you like Samoa Joe. What's your thoughts on a potential MJF and Samoa Joe feud?
Well, I think that I know we're going to have a nice drama-free show, so I'm not going to mention a certain name, but I think Samoa Joe is the reason why we're kind of able to avoid certain drama that's happening in AEW right now. I think he's holding up the company. I think he's a great worker, probably a force in the locker room. But, this is going to be a great rivalry, MJF and Samoa Joe. I mean, I think that, I know we're going to have a nice drama-free show, so I'm not going to mention a certain name, but I think Samoa Joe is the reason why we're kind of able to avoid certain drama that's happening in AEW right now. I think he's holding up the company. I think he's a great worker, probably a force in the locker room. But this is going to be a great rivalry, MJF and Samoa Joe. I mean, I don't think you could ask for a better rivalry in AEW, and I think it's a great segue. Unfortunately, it is because a certain individual who we'll just keep that name quiet is exiting. But no, I think it's going to be a great way to build MJF up, make him look strong. I mean, and a really good opening to the show, fun old school match, like you said, Ben, a little predictable, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And considering the speed booking of everything with AEW, with what they've been doing, I think they had a fantastic opening.
Absolutely. I mean, it is something now where we've got to wait and see how this storyline plays out. But let's hope it's a good one. Coby, as the head of reviews, what did you think about the opening match?
I mean, I think that's the thing, and you guys have already hit the nail on the head. And this was, yes, we've seen this a lot, and this is elements, but this is just well thought out storytelling. We have we have MJF teasing the kangaroo kick, not giving it to it. So when you actually get it, the crowd do go nuts. It's great. The psychology, like MJF this year especially, doesn't get enough credit because he sold his ass off for Bryan Danielson. He sold his ass off for Takeshita. He sold his ass off in the four-way. He sold his ass off for Tanahashi, someone who does need it. And then he sold his ass for Adam Cole, and he's selling his ass in every single match he's a part of. And I fully agree that he has a reason that you could call MJF one of the wrestlers of the year. At the end of the day, this is exactly what you want from an opener. Started off hot, started off well. It was a good point of the night. We're not sitting there saying, "Oh, I'm glad I'm not I'm mad that something else didn't open the show." This match opened the show and it started off the night greatly. Great action. Nothing too innovative, but that's all. You don't need to be innovative. You just need to tell a good story, which they did. You need to sell your ass off like MJF has done. You have a hot crowd and you're working your crowd. That's what I really like. I think the tease of a Samoa Joe MJF feud is really good because keep in mind Samoa Joe is, yes, I don't want to say he's a lot older, but he's someone that can. He's one of the few men in AEW that could probably handle an MJF promo battle like Adam Cole, like a CM Punk, like himself. Samoa Joe's gonna hold his own, and that's what I'm excited for. I don't know if there how much more of a story there is to be told other than, oh, I pushed you 7 years ago and now you're the top champion. I want to be the one to humble you down again or something like that. I don't know what else you can do, but I'm excited because I mean Samoa Joe's in the championship reign as well. I don't know if this becomes a title for title feud. I don't know if maybe Samoa Joe loses the title along the way. I don't know. But I actually am excited to see if they do go, what direction they take and what story they do try to tell between these two men.
Those are some great points. And my only concern, actually, is something which you just mentioned, Coby. Of course, Samoa Joe is a champion, but he recently had, he faced another champion, and that champion was the man who Carter was referencing, CM Punk. Of course, no longer with AEW, but he was the AEW Real World Champion. And he, of course, lost, as Samoa Joe, of course, lost to CM Punk. He lost for that championship. So if he now suddenly does get an AEW championship opportunity, I don't know how to feel about that. But perhaps he's just going to be one of the many names in that tournament. We know Roderick Strong is in it. So maybe it's just to throw, a spanner in the works ahead of that tournament and to have both Roderick Strong and Samoa Joe be possible opponents for MJF to make it feel not as obvious. I mean, Anthony, would you prefer to see perhaps MJF versus Joe or MJF versus Roddy Strong?
Ben, I got to be honest. What I really want to see is MJF say, you couldn't even win the real world championship and you think you could beat me for it? And Samoa Joe is the last person to ever challenge for that official. It's an unofficial title, yet there was a graphic for it. But anyway, to me, Roddy, they're still playing the neck things. Ultimately, it's probably going to lead to a Roddy Adam Cole thing maybe down the road. MJF against Samoa Joe could be interesting, and it would easily be MJF's toughest challenge just
Yeah,
because of Joe's aggressiveness, the size, and, his propensity to use chokeholds and stuff like that with his injured neck. They could really do a lot with it. Presumably, Roddy may try to cost MJF the belt. Adam will probably come down to fight Roddy off the Kingdom. It's all going to fall into place. I don't see Joe taking the belt. It would be interesting if they did, and then MJF, of course, blames Roddy and blames Adam for not handling Roddy, and that blows up further. They could do that. They have a number of different options that they could do to make this thing work. It's just a matter of, okay, are you going to take any of these options that'll work, or are you just going to pull something out that may fail? We're going to have to wait and see.
Well, we will, and I hope that they do something that works. And let's hope it's entertaining as well. But yeah, it was certainly an interesting opening to the pay-per-view, and not one. Well, I think anybody would be shocked if the AEW, if you told them a year ago that the AEW champion would not be defending his belt on All Out, but instead featured in a ROH tag match to open the show on All Out. But in the end, it worked. But now let's talk about something else which I thought worked, and that was Luchasaurus versus Darby Allin. Of course, Luchasaurus and Christian Cage have kind of been, I don't want to say sharing the TNT championship. Luchasaurus is the champion, but Christian Cage is kind of pretending he is. It's a bit of a weird story, but as it goes on, actually, I'm hating it less and less and enjoying it more and more. Christian Cage has somehow gotten it over for me. But Darby Allin versus Luchasaurus last night. Whew, this was a brutal match. Luchasaurus was just completely battering Darby. Darby kept fighting back. Clark tried to give Darby Allin the assist by trying to lift him up when he was by the apron. But unfortunately, it was not enough, and Luchasaurus still got that victory. It was brutal at times. Darby Allin took some stuff which, well, it looked rough to say the very, very least. But Anthony, what were your thoughts on this TNT Championship bout?
It was great watching Clark live on pay-per-view, helping Darby Allin try to get up. I enjoyed that. I said to him earlier, I texted him, I went, before they even panned up that was you, I don't know why I knew that was your hand lifting him up before that, which he got a pop for. But, Darby is one of those talents that concerns me a lot because he gives everything to a point where it's so risky. Like, I realize Darby's not going to be around in 10 years if he continues the pace that he's doing, because at some point, those injuries are going to add up. At some point, like taking the spot where Luchasaurus has literally got a set of stairs on his back and he's stepping on it. I don't think there's a safe way to take that move. I don't know how Darby's going to be walking in 10 to 15 years. I really don't. It concerns me. But just the match itself, the underdog against the monster in Luchasaurus, I'm always compelled by those matches. I love the underdog fighting from underneath to try to beat the monster. Shawn Michaels used to do that with The Undertaker all the time. You could tell a really compelling story by doing that. So I think it was the right move to keep the belt on Luchasaurus and see where that goes. Him destroying Darby visually, I thought was a really compelling image. At some point, Luchasaurus is probably going to snap with Christian claiming to be the real champion, which I think at some point that's probably going to play out. So I'm curious to see where they go from this. I don't know if Darby's done with Luchasaurus or if they continue it, because they did have Nick Wayne in there. So is it going to be Christian and Darby fighting, against Christian and Luchasaurus? Are they going to continue that? Is Sting going to play a role? Somebody else going to be put in? Again, AEW has a lot of options to see where they go with this, but this match absolutely delivered.
I do agree with you that they have a lot of options. I hope you're wrong about the health of Darby Allin, but I completely
I want to be wrong too. I want to be wrong. It just every time he's in there, it's riskier and riskier, and he doesn't slow down.
It is brutal. It truly is. I mean, you mentioned Nick Wayne as well, and I've been having a thought process, a thought process. I've been thinking, and of course, we saw the Mogul Embassy. We saw AR Fox join them and then get kicked out. We saw the Mogul Embassy just completely take out Nick Wayne, leave him for dead. And then Darby Allin just forgave AR Fox afterwards. It was very weird. Nick Wayne didn't seem too happy about it. I have a theory, and I'm not the one to come up with this theory. As well, I originally thought it, but then as soon as I thought it, I saw it on Twitter. So clearly other people are on the same wavelength, and that is that perhaps Nick Wayne could be turning heel and joining the Mogul Embassy, and maybe Nick Wayne versus Darby Allin is the next feud. And I think that could...
Would that make any more sense than him getting beat down and Darby just forgiving AR Fox? Like, you get beat down by them and all of a sudden you join them. Like, that doesn't... I'm not crazy about that idea either.
Yeah.
If you want to turn him heel, fine, but why would he join the same group to beat him down?
That's true. I mean, maybe they showed him that Darby Allin was not a real friend. I don't know.
Well, they did that with Claudio and Yuta, didn't they, recently? Oh, we beat him down all the time. Like, it would be like essentially doing the same thing again, isn't it?
Yeah, they did it super recently as well.
Yeah.
On Rampage, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Oh gosh, but now let's talk about... We're talking about beatdowns. Let's talk about, one of the most brutal matches I have seen in a long time in AEW, which didn't have weapons in it, and that was Miro versus Powerhouse Hobbs. This was brutal. There was a meat chant during it, as there was two men in it, what everybody's saying, slapping meat. Just completely and utterly beating the hell out of each other. Super, super fun match. Miro Hobbs, it was something people had wanted for quite a while. Collision viewers, people who were watching Collision every week, they were asking for it on Twitter-X, Instagram, all of those. They were saying, please can we have Powerhouse Hobbs versus Miro, the two guys with no real direction other than squashing people. How about we put them together? It was very 80s, though, the way that this feud was set up, where they just both do squash matches, and then they go, well, hey, you guys want to see these two against each other? Let's go for it. It was very, very fun. The crowd loved it. And in the end, Miro got the victory. Super fun match. And then after Miro got that victory, Powerhouse Hobbs shook hands with him before taking him out. Hobbs was not having any of it. Hobbs wanted to be the one standing tall. But then out came somebody who, used to be alongside Miro in WWE back when he was known as Rusev. And that is the artist formerly known as Lana, now known as CJ Perry. She came down, of course, to try and help her husband Miro, got in the ring, did save Miro. Miro took out Hobbs, and Miro ignored her and walked out of the ring. Of course, months ago when Miro returned, he said that he had got rid of his god, he had got rid of his wife, and he just wanted to focus on himself. Well, his wife is now back, and his wife is trying to win him back. And I think yesterday was the start of a possible on-screen relationship between the two, and that is not something which I'm going to complain about, because in WWE as Lana, she was so good with Rusev. She really, really was. People didn't give her the credit that she deserved as a manager, in my honest opinion. What did you think about it, Carter? Did you enjoy this match? And, are you happy to see CJ Perry in AEW?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like an absolute, just hard-hitting, smacking, two guys that you could feed to my boy Samoa Joe. I mean, we were grilling and watching it, so it was just two big boys smacking meat, strong style wrestling. It was a beautiful match. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, it really is one of those matches where everybody just wants to have fun watching it. No matter, I mean, there obviously was a story there was, but even if there wasn't, people would have still just loved to see this. There's two men who've been built up well themselves, but they've kind of lacked major feuds, and they both the two titans clashed basically. Super fun match. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I mean, guys, would you say that perhaps to this point this was the match of the night?
For me, it was.
Yeah.
To me, Miro has become like Mr. All Out, because when he's given that opportunity to perform, like All Out 21 with him in Kingston. They tore the house down. And they did the same thing here because these are two guys that can go. And they were given an opportunity to go. So for me, it was absolutely up to that point. It was match of the night, and it could still make an argument when the night was done that it was up there as one of the best matches of the night.
I will agree with that. It was very, very fun. And we got a comment from Numero One Superfly here saying, "Do you think AEW will reference Lana making love to Bobby Lashley from 2020 as a reason why Miro doesn't trust his wife?" I mean, that would be the real Forbidden Door, wouldn't it? Bobby Lashley getting a reference on AEW television, but I mean,
they could drop a Bobby. They could drop a just say Bobby, or you've cheated on me before, or something to that effect.
And wasn't there something else at one point
using the word Almighty? Something about Almighty.
I'm sure WWE has that trademarked.
I mean,
and I'm thinking back.
Yeah,
there was something happening in Milwaukee, wasn't there, as well with her?
I think there was a Rock thing too.
Yeah,
because the Rock and Lana had a moment of like, oh, remember the hotel or something like that, something along those lines.
The Rock's done that for years with Lillian Garcia asking about the strudel.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, so Aiden English, that's right. Aiden English did this entire thing to Miro when they were feuding, saying there was one night in Milwaukee where something happened between Aiden English and Lana. I think that ended up being found as false or whatever, but who knows? I'd love for there to be you know what happened with Bobby, you know what happened with Dwayne, you know what happened with Aiden. It would be, it'd be very, very fun for sure, but I doubt they'll do that. But would definitely get a pop from, longtime fans of the Rusev and Lana story.
It's what MJF would do.
That's true. It certainly would be. But now let's move on and let's talk about AEW's women's division, as the TBS championship was defended as Chris Statlander took on Ruby Soho in a match which it was good. It was a very fun match. There just wasn't, much to say about this, and that kind of sucks because it was a good match. But coming out of it, the only thing there was to mention is Toni Storm, because Toni Storm showed up, and she's been certainly one of the few highlights of the women's division in AEW at the minute. This new gimmick of hers, it's something fresh, it's something new, and it's something which is just very, very intriguing. So I'm very excited to see where that goes. Obviously, she kind of cost Ruby Soho the match. It was done a little weird. It wasn't explained too well on commentary, in my opinion. Apparently, there was a throwback to something that happened on Rampage a couple of weeks ago. And I'm going to be fully honest, I don't have time to watch Rampage most weeks. So that went over my head, and it wasn't explained on commentary. So I would have liked them to, explain that a little more. But it was a fun match for what it was. But Coby, give me your thoughts on this.
I mean, that's the thing, and like just to pedal off of what you just said about the Rampage thing, I took it as more of Toni Storm's took the can because that's what cost her the match at All In. That's the way I took it. At least that's the way I inferred it, or however you want to say it. But that's the thing. Like you said, this was a match that happened. It was good. It wasn't like, we're not going to sit there and say it was anything bad. We're not going to sit there and say it was anything tremendous. We already know what most of the top matches of women's wrestling are in this calendar year. And I mean, that one of them is the Willow Athena match under the AEW / Ring of Honor brand. At the end of the day, this was really good. I kind of feel Saraya was almost a distraction because you could see, not that you could see her a lot, but you could almost hear her talking with the fans. Oh, she went over, ripped a sign. I like the fact that you're getting heat, but it was almost slightly distracting because I could hear her voice. I could hear the commentary referring to her actions, and it's like, okay, well, you got to be focusing more on the match. You got to be, but I mean, I was fine with it. It wasn't over the top distraction worthy, but it was fine. I thought there was good action. I liked the fact that they were making it apparent that Chris Statlander has never beaten Ruby Soho in their matches before. Obviously, that made it kind of telegraph that Soho was going to lose the match. I was fine with the result. I think the finish is fun because obviously the cracks are still forming in the Outcasts, and we're not going to pretend like the one win from Collision is going to just repair that. And it's not.
Yeah. No, you are right. It's similar to what kind of happened in the the storyline with the Judgment Day over on WWE Raw, and then the Bloodline as well, where they kind of repair these cracks, but then they get bigger, and it's basically just paper over cracks, as the old expression goes. But now let's talk about something which, well, a lot of people are coming out of this show and saying is match of the night, because we had Ricky Starks taking on Bryan Danielson in a strap match. And of course, originally, we can presume that it was probably going to be Ricky Starks versus CM Punk in this strap match. Obviously, Punk got fired, so they threw in Danielson instead, who returned from injury. And boy, oh boy, am I glad that Bryan Danielson is back on our TV screens, as every time he has a match, especially a pay-per-view match, it is a banger of a bout, and this one was no different. I'm personally just not a huge fan of strap matches, full honesty, but it was fun. Maybe a little too much choking for my liking. It was brutal, though. A lot of people thought that this was their perhaps even match of the year, and who am I to argue with that? The action, and it was phenomenal, with two great stars facing each other. But Anthony, give me your thoughts on the strap match between Ricky Starks and Bryan Danielson.
For me, it was definitely my match of the night. Preliminarily, it's my match of the month, and we're only 4 days in now at this point. So I think it was an incredible match, and yes, the rumors were that it was going to be he who shall not be named, who was fired, was supposed to be in this, and I actually think it probably turned out to be a better match, even though I think Punk probably would have had a great match with him in it. I think Danielson's more willing to put his body on the line. I don't know how many lashes Punk would have been okay with, to be honest. I think Danielson absolutely delivered and then some in this match. It elevated Ricky Starks, even though Starks didn't win. It was designed to welcome Bryan back and also to elevate Starks. And if you look at it, Starks did not tap out. He passed out. That worked with Austin, with Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. It's been done. Visually, it was disturbing to watch because you saw Starks' eyes in his face, and it was disturbing to watch. Make no mistake about it. It also reminded me the finish of Bryan choking out Justin Roberts years ago during the Nexus invasion with the tie. That immediately is where I made the connection to it. I'm a little surprised that the announcers didn't even imply something like that, but especially since Roberts was literally right there. I thought it was brutal, but it needed to be. That type of match needed to be brutal. At no point did I think it was going to be Ricky the Dragon. When they announced, he's going to challenge Ricky the Dragon, I'm like, Ricky already had his quote-unquote last match after Flair's, and it kind of went out on a high note. He did everything right that Flair didn't. Ricky was limited. He did his greatest hits, and that was it. He didn't try to overdo it in the match. So I couldn't imagine Ricky coming back for a strap match, even though I think Tony would have probably offered him a lot of money to do it. I don't think Ricky wanted to do that. So them doing a little play of the Dragon name and Ricky not reading the contract also made me think of the whole Shane buys WCW. The name on the contract's McMahon, but it's not Vince McMahon, it's Shane McMahon. That's what it reminded me of, even though, legally it's not like Ricky signing the contract, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, but, playing it up, I thought it was nicely done, and it was a phenomenal match. Just really good, and having them putting out the money again for Bryan to have the entrance music of Final Countdown was tremendous as well, which I think they're paying like 25 or 50,000 every time they play it. I think it's some insane number. I remember Brian talking about it. They wanted some like insane figure when he was coming into the company, and they didn't want to do it. So I don't know if they worked out some deal for that or not, because we've now seen it twice, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, poor Sonny Kiss, because Tony Khan revealed last night that Sonny, has been let go from the company. The contract hasn't been renewed. And I mean, Danielson did say, you're right, that the final countdown, each time they play it, it's worth more than a few wrestlers in the company's contract.
So I'm thinking between the money they saved on Cody's pyro and whatever they're going to save with Punk and Sonny Kiss, and who knows who else that they'll let go, they might have enough money to play this enough times.
Every week on Dynamite, you just see one person released from the AEW roster each week as they play it each week. That'd be very funny. I mean, well, not really funny. It wouldn't be funny at all. But of course, Danielson. Some people are speculating that maybe they'll use the theme just for pay-per-views, and
I would do it for the bigger ones. Definitely the bigger one for like an All Out, or if he's battling for the title, or it's a major story, major feud that he's in, it would make sense. I mean, if he comes out on Rampage with it, then you're just throwing money away. If that's what you're doing, like honestly, if you're just pissing it away on a Rampage, then I'm questioning your logic, unless you came to some agreement with them where you could play it, for as much as you want for this set figure for the whole year. Then okay, but if you're paying that every time it plays, and you're wasting on a Rampage, or even worse, if he makes an appearance on Ring of Honor, on Honor Club, and you're wasting on the streaming service, it makes it even worse.
It should be if he appears on Rampage or Ring of Honor, whoever his opponent is, if they can't beat him, their contract has to go. They need the money. But, oh gosh, I do hope there's
I know I
some
took
deal
that
otherwise.
off the rails, didn't I?
Oh, but one thing which you did mention, Justin Roberts, I love that comparison you made.
Yes.
It would have been really cool if the camera moved when some of that stuff was happening, from Danielson, choking Starks, to just Justin Roberts at ringside watching, and
to
his
show him
face just being, like that would have been a cool flashback as well. Just a little thing. Yeah, exactly.
Even if he hesitated just a little when he announced Danielson, because he was so thrown by the visual, and the announcers could have said something along the lines of, "Yeah, Justin's been on the other end of that, so keep that in mind," or something. They could have, but that's what I thought of instantly, especially that finish. That was 100%
it's a great comparison. It really, really is. But let's talk about from one great match to another. And then we had Kenny Omega taking on Konosuke Takeshita. And wow. Oh, wow. Whenever we review a pay-per-view, there's always one controversial rating that people in the comments aren't happy with us for. And today, it was this one. Some people thought we should have given it 5. And, Coby rated it 4.75, which in my opinion was very, very fair. But it was a phenomenal match. It really, really was. I mean, who's really surprised? It's a Kenny Omega singles match on a pay-per-view. It's going to be great. Takeshita, he had a chance to show how great he was. And also the fact that Takeshita got the victory really surprised me, but I'm completely happy about it. I mean, you're putting over a younger star into Takeshita. He's somebody who can be with the company, for... I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Omega's going to be there for at least, the next 5 to 10 years, but Takeshita could be there for the next 15 to 20 even. So I think they really are making a star into Takeshita. And alongside Don Callis, I'm really excited to see where it goes. But this match itself was really, really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. But Carter, give me your thoughts on it. Omega versus Takeshita.
Don't mind me as I go full Dave Meltzer on this one. And no, Coby would have given it 6 stars if it was in the Tokyo Dome. No, I mean, Omega singles match. Get that clip thing ready, Ben. I think Kenny Omega may be the best singles wrestler of our generation. I mean, he is fantastic. And Takeshita, I think I've seen him in the Indies. I saw him with DDT, GCW. I saw him with PWG. I mean, he looks like a WWE wrestler. He's huge, amazing body. And I think this match was sort of a passing of the torch. I mean, just fantastic, Japanese style wrestling, just beautiful match. 4.7 stars is a great rating, Coby. You nailed that one. I think it was just like, you could say match of the night, depending on kind of the style of wrestling you prefer. But if you prefer kind of traditional Puretsu, it doesn't get better than Takeshita and Kenny Omega. And I think this is a handing of the torch from one of the greats who did some amazing things in Japan, in Kenny. And he's passing the torch off. Different company. I know New Japan, DDT, but I think it's the beginning of some big things for Takeshita down the road. I think he's going to do great things in AEW, great things in the Indies, and I'm just excited to witness this guy's career. He's amazing. I've seen him live, and he's awesome. Great wrestler.
We need to make you a t-shirt, Carter, which just says "Underline is the best wrestler ever" or something like that. But I do agree with you. It was such a good match. Takeshita's development has been crazy. Omega, there's very few singles wrestlers. I mean, Will Ospreay's maybe one who you can argue. Danielson's probably another, but Kenny Omega, in all seriousness, really is undoubtedly up there as one of the best of this current generation. In the ring itself, super fun match, and it's gonna be interesting to see where this storyline develops from here. But let's now talk about two teams who faced each other last week at All In. I was there in attendance, All In Wembley Stadium, AEW's biggest show ever until this week. But anyway, no, factually last week was still the biggest show ever. 80,000 people, the Young Bucks and FTR wrestled in a classic tag team wrestling match. I loved it. But last night, they teamed up as YB FTR, I'm calling them. Other people are calling them BTE FTR or BT FTR, whatever you want to do it, Oh, I mean, that's an interesting one. FT. Oh, no, that wouldn't work, would it? But anyway, enough of me trying to figure out a tag team name for them. As a one-off, they tagged together in an 8-man tag team match against Bullet Club Gold. This was kind of put in the position, I feel like, to just give some of the crowd a breather after, Omega versus Takeshita, before Orange Cassidy versus Jon Moxley in the main event. But with that said, the crowd was still surprisingly quite hot for it. I did think it slightly outstayed its welcome. Maybe should have been 3 to 5 minutes shorter, but it was a good 8-man tag team match. But Coby, what did you think about this one?
I mean, that's the thing, is he hit the nail on the head, and this is one of those matches that was like, yeah, this is going to be the one kind of like, we're going to have a bit of a break from the big show. We're going to kind of take some time to cool off the crowd, because this was following Omega and Takeshita. That's at the end of the day is what was happening. But that's the thing. That was the break. We were preparing them for the main event. We knew the crowd were going to be hotter for the main event, and they were. At the end of the day, this match was really good. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, reminds me of this and this." There was a number of moments between the Young Bucks and FTR similar to the Revival and DIY, and I mean, especially that triple threat match with the AOP. There was a lot of moments where one of each guys did the Shatter Machine, and then they did the Meet in the Middle. There were a number of moments in this match like that. You have I think it was not Dax. You had Cash doing super kicks. There's a lot. You had them. We see the superplex and big splash combo from FTR, and you have the Young Bucks adding on to that with another elbow and a 450 from the Jackson brothers. At the end of the day, this was just really good. This wasn't a rushed match by all means. I do agree, I do understand the sentiment, but I think this lasted the time it needed, because it was good action. They had to build to a climax. The action at the end of it was high, fast paced, really good. The near falls were great as well. I like the fact that Bullet Club Gold are getting wins and they are building this faction because they need it. I don't necessarily like the fact they're still calling it Bullet Club Gold and using the fact that Jay White was kicked out of the Bullet Club, or at least he was. At the end of the day, they're still calling him Bullet Club. I don't. At the end of the day, they're building this group, and I really like that they're giving people like Jay White a reason. They're pushing Jay White. They're pushing Juice Robinson, and the Guns are very much being one of the better used tag teams and the better placed tag teams of the company in general. I thought this was a really good match. I think this was far better than the Elite versus Blackpool Combat Club match from Forbidden Door, or Team Blackpool Combat Club versus Team Elite. I think this was far better. There's not much more you can say, but this was just one of those really good matches that it's like it is going to go under the radar because it wasn't fantastic, but it was a solid match.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Because it was between two amazing matches, people are going to forget about it a bit. So that is completely fair. Only thing I'll disagree with you on is Jay White being kicked out of Bullet Club. I like the fact they're calling it Bullet Club Gold because technically he was never kicked out. Technically, what happened was that David Finlay just took him out. But it was never like the entire Bullet Club turned on him. And then afterwards, David Finlay was then brought into Bullet Club. And because of that, it adds an entire political thing where Jay White's like, well, I'm the leader. I'm not kicked out. I'm still in Bullet Club. You guys can be a fake Bullet Club. This is the real Bullet Club. And that was kind of the storyline which he was doing with his type of, faction within Bullet Club in Japan. It's all very confusing, the Bullet Club arc at this point. But anyway, let's now move on to something less confusing. And that's this Orange Cassidy storyline, right? When Orange Cassidy joined AEW, I openly criticized it because I was like, why are they bringing in a comedy wrestler? This doesn't make any sense to me. This is meant to be the sports, the more sports-like product. I didn't like it one bit. However, he very quickly proved me wrong. In that match he had with Pac, he changed his gimmick. He was no longer somebody who, people would sell those faint kicks or anything like that. He would do them to get in the head of his opponents, and I really loved that. But still, I thought he was just somebody who should be, a low mid-card guy. He should never be pushed any higher than that. Oh, no. He has proven me wrong. This AEW International Championship reign has been phenomenal. One of the best championship reigns in AEW, dare I say. He's told the story, he is somebody who's a very relaxed character. Somebody who comes across as very lazy at times. That's what his character, that's what his character portrays. However, this title reign has been anything but lazy. He has been, a workhorse champion. He's been fighting over and over and over again against any challenger. Open challenges, weekly defenses. And his body has just been breaking on him bit by bit by bit. And all of this came to Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley, one of the best wrestlers in the world. Somebody who's brutal. Somebody who will just beat you up until you are knocked down. And for these two guys to face each other, it was just perfect. It was a perfect end to the storyline. And another thing I liked is the fact that Jon Moxley didn't underestimate Orange Cassidy. A lot of his challenges in the past have gone in and underestimated him. Jon Moxley didn't. Jon Moxley said, I know how good you are. I've seen this championship reign, but I'm better than you. And Orange Cassidy was like, no, I'm not taking that. I'm not just a guy with a catchphrase. And this match, when I found out it was main eventing, guess what? I doubted it again. And guess what? It proved me wrong again. This was such a good main event match. One of, if not my favorite, AEW pay-per-view main events. The story, it was just told so well. It really, really was. You talk about telling a story throughout a match. This is how you do it. It was perfection. It really, really was. And Jon Moxley, of course, got the victory in the end. Orange Cassidy gave everything that he had, and he was just left lying in the ring I personally would have just loved the pay-per-view to just be cut there, but no, they let him get up, and then he did fall down again, but they gave him, an ovation on all of that. It was nice. It was near perfect. I really, really enjoyed this storyline. But Carter, I'll send this one to you first. What did you think about Orange Cassidy versus Jon Moxley for the AEW International Championship?
I mean, all things considered, I think as an AEW fan, you couldn't have asked for a better main event. Have it like I use the analogy. Imagine if WWE had SummerSlam the week after WrestleMania. I mean, I thought it was a great way to take one of their company guys, one of the hardest hitting, rough brawler type dudes, and just take the championship off of a great run out of Orange Cassidy. You're right, Ben. I thought that turning him from a joke wrestler into something that's kind of serious, but also kind of a joke too. I mean, just great build up of the middle card, great booking. And I mean, I thought it was a fantastic main event. I know my boy Jim Cornette won't be too happy about Moxley having a title, but I mean, he's done so much for AEW, so much for the company. And considering the fact that they just had a big pay-per-view last week to throw an event like this with a headliner like that. I know it's not the big title, like more of a mid-card title. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but all things considered, give Moxley his flowers, give him to him in Chicago. I thought it was a beautiful, culmination for 2 weekends for AEW. And I thought all things considered, Tony Khan did a good job considering his life was being threatened last week.
Oh gosh, but yes. But yeah, no, I do agree. When this was announced as the main event, I wasn't too happy about it, but they proved us wrong. They just straight up did. What about you, Coby? How did you feel about the main event of AEW All Out 2023?
I think that's the thing. And I mean, it's obvious that there's going to be the person that likes the style and there's going to be the person that doesn't. Obviously, I haven't checked the comments on Instagram that posted about the 5-star rating. It got, got 5-star rating. But that's the thing. I'm looking at this match and I'm not seeing botches. I'm seeing a very hot crowd. I see and I know the story because that's exactly what they told. Jon Moxley came into this knowing how good Orange Cassidy was, but he was determined to prove he was better, and that was the story being played. The story was told, whether you like it or not. A story was told, whether you read the book or not. A story was told in this match, and you can't sit there and say there wasn't. I just praised MJF earlier in the show for him selling his ass off time and time again this year. Orange Cassidy deserves his flowers. Because that's what this storyline and that's what this championship reign has been built around, is the fact that his body is wearing down, his body is needs repair, but the body is taking beating after match after match, and it was just building to a crescendo of, okay, when's the moment where he can no longer handle it, and this is exactly what it was. I loved the finish too. We have Orange Cassidy flipping him off before taking a brutal Death Rider. I like the Death Rider name over the paradigm shift, but I think there's not much more you can ask for in a pay-per-view main event, in a main event in general. This match was what I don't know if it'll go down as one of the matches of the year, but there was nothing bad about this match that you can say. If you like you hate the Moxie style, good for you. I don't care about what you like or dislike. But at the end of the day, this match was very, very, very well done.
I absolutely agree. And for me, I think it probably will go down in my top 10 matches, maybe top 5 matches of the year. Personally, my match of the night, although I do know a lot of people preferred Starks Danielson. But what about you, Anthony? How did you feel about this main event match for not the AEW Championship, but the AEW International Championship?
It's one of those things that with Orange, I know on the show in different points, I've not been the biggest fan. And it's because I'm not a fan of the little taps and kicks when it's like the little knee taps. To me, that takes it out. But when Orange is on and shows real competitiveness, like the fiery promo that he cut on Dynamite. That's the orange I want to see. So going into this, I was interested. And I really haven't been really majorly interested in orange until this title reign. I think arguably it's the most prestigious. He's made it the most prestigious title in the company outside of the world title because he did open challenges, because he was successful with it. And I think it elevated him. It did what it was supposed to do. An ideal title reign is supposed to elevate you and the title. He did both. So going into it, I had optimism towards it. I did question it being in the main event earlier in the night, but especially after watching the strap match going, that could have been the main event. But I think they absolutely delivered in this match. I haven't been this excited to watch Orange compete other than the match that, prior to Mania, the Jeff Jarrett match, and that was for selfish reasons because I wanted to watch Soul get his hair cut because he bet on Jeff Jarrett. But as a whole, in this match, it was competitive. I think the only thing he could have possibly done to elevate Orange more if he somehow got away and squeaked away with one more successful defense. But he lost in a convincing way. He didn't look bad. He looked like the underdog that gave everything he had to try to retain, and the tank was empty. So he lost. And it didn't take just one, it took two of Moxley's finishers to do it. I don't know where you go with Orange after this because you've already kind of teased MJF Samoa Joe. I think you could have teased Orange and MJF. That could have been the next potential feud if they wanted to go that route. I don't know where Moxley goes with this. Is Moxley going to hold this long term because you don't want to take the title off of MJF, so you're going to give him the second most prestigious title in the company and have him run with that? There's so many questions coming out of the show of what direction they're going to go because there's so many little pieces that could work. So I'm very curious where they go with this. And the scary part to me is this was a show that was built in a rush over essentially two shows in Dynamite and Collision. I'm not counting Rampage because no one watches Rampage. So that to me was a card that on paper underwhelmed, which is what I said on Thursday. I said it can underwhelm on paper and maybe over deliver on the actual show. And I think it did. I think it was a better show than All In, and all the focus was on All In. But then again, All In got overshadowed by behind the scenes nonsense because people can't be adults. And the pressure was now on All Out to deliver and not to be overshadowed by news of someone's firing. And I think they did it. I think they absolutely did it, and it's probably one of the best pay-per-views they had. I don't think it's the best. I think the all-time best pay-per-view they ever had was All Out 21. And probably the original Double or Nothing I would probably put above this one last night, but this was definitely one of the better ones in their history, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, you just bring up, a fantastic point, Anthony, about is this the best pay-per-view in AEW history? You mentioned All Out 2021 as being your top one.
Yes.
And that is, we did a post on Instagram earlier today, and that's the one which a lot of people are saying, All Out 2021 is my favorite. For me personally, I adored All Out 2021. My only issue is that I don't think I enjoyed Omega versus Christian Cage as much as a lot of people did. And while, of course, that wasn't, coming out of the show, that wasn't your immediate focus because you just saw Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson debut, I still do think the main event match has to be very, very good. But Carter, very quickly, firstly, what would you say is your pay-per-view? What do you think is AEW's best pay-per-view in their short history?
Should I go with the first all in, or was All Out the first one?
You could
pay-per-view.
Double or Nothing is technically their first. All In was technically under Ring of Honor, technically.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I might go the first one, but I'm relatively new to AEW as you guys know, so I can't properly comment on it as a PWG SoCal boy, but I'll go with the first one.
Nice. That is a very solid choice. We got 20 seconds. Coby, what about you? What do you think is the best pay-per-view in AEW's history?
At the end of the day, Double or Nothing 2019 is always going to be up there as well. All Out 21 is always going to be what people consider the WrestleMania 17. But I think because of such the landscape, because of the landscape changed at All Out 21, AEW had to make a big statement with this show. So I think you can argue either of them. Personally, as an in-ring product, everything delivered on this show. Keep in mind, All Out 21 had Paul White versus QT Marshall.
That's a very good point
yes,
as well.
The purpose, but I think as a show from start to finish, I do think All Out 23 is one of the better ones.
Yes, I will agree with you there, Coby. It was a very, very fun show and they delivered. But guys, thank you so much for watching our show today. We're here every single day, 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern and 12 p.m. Pacific. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're over on YouTube, please hit a like and subscribe. If you're over on Twitch, a follow. And if you're on Spotify, well, a cheeky 5-star always helps. Thank you to Anthony, thank you to Coby, and thank you to Carter for joining me here today. It's been a banger of an episode, and we'll see you guys same time tomorrow for the Raw review. And Clark will